Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Across the Park podcast. Delighted to be joined once again by Joe from Albion Obsessed, and it's our first preview of the season, first opposition preview of the season. Absolutely delighted that the Premier League's back. Not so sure. I'm completely excited about the first game. I'm actually away. I'm missing the game myself. I don't think Joe is actually getting up to it, but we're going to get into the game anyway and previewing it in its entirety, certainly focusing on the Brighton side of things. So first of all, Joe, welcome back and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, good to be back, mate. Always good to chat to you. So yeah, let's go.
So first of all, Joe, obviously the big news from the end of last season, which was somewhat inevitable anyway, the departure of De Zerbi, and I know you're a huge fan and a huge admirer of what he'd done in the period he was there. Take us back a little bit to that. What was that like losing him, and how's it been the new coach coming in? What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, it was an emotional goodbye at the end of last season. After the United game, I think they announced that Zerbi would be leaving sort of a week before the United game, so we had obviously time to prepare any goodbyes and just sort of, I don't know, to get used to the fact that he won't be there. But it was something that we were preparing for anyway. We thought that Bayern Munich would come in for him. We thought Liverpool would come in for him. I really did think that he was going on to a much bigger job. But he's gone to Marseille. And that's not to discredit Marseille at all. They are a big club in France, and they've got European football, so it is probably a bigger job than Brighton, if I'm being completely honest. So it's just a bit of a weird one. It ended quite probably quite sourly in terms of the relationship between De Zerbi and the owners. And I think he's even come out in the last sort of couple of days to say why there was why he left, and it was a relationship breakdown with Tony Bloom. So in that sense, if you've got someone trying to be bigger than the club, trying to push his ideas rather than following what the club have done and are continuing to do extremely well, you sort of have to let them go, because it's not going to work out in the long run. And I think that the writing was on the wall at the end of last season. Our form, it just took an absolute nosedive. And if we kept him, it would have continued this season. So I think we've done well to move him on, in the right way, so the fans could say goodbye, rather than obviously what we've had with Graham Potter in the past. And that we still hold him in high regard as to what he's done for this club. But then we move on to this new chapter, and we're really excited.
So Fabian Herzler, obviously, I'm pretty sure, like yourself, it wasn't a name that rolls off the tongue, and it was the first name on the list. However, as you just alluded to, you trust the process, you trust what Tony Bloom, whoever else, Davy Weir, etc., may be involved in the process. What have you seen so far? I mean, the dealings in the summer have been typical Brighton, if you like. It looks like you brought some good value in there. You've also picked up Minter from Newcastle, who Everton were very keen on signing. Who looks in pre-season like he's flew out the traps, and he looks like he's certainly ready for the season. But just before we touch on the players, feelings on the coach, what have you seen so far in terms of what we can expect from the team?
Yeah, I think to get the overused thing out of the way, yes, he is very young, and I think when they do come in and they're quite a young coach, you sort of hope that they capture you straight away. And I went to a fans forum just this last week, and Fabian Hertzler was there. And the way he commands a room is absolutely unbelievable. I was listening to his every word. You could hear a pin drop. So he's got that sort of feel to him that no matter how old he is, no matter if there's a player 4 or 5 years older than him, he will gain the respect from people, and people will follow his ideas. And what the club have said is that as soon as they met with him, as soon as they spoke to him, he was the man. So that fills me with a lot of confidence that we've not just had to settle for second, third, fourth best. We've gone and got the person we wanted. And that succession planning at Brighton and Hove Albion is just one of the best in world football. We could lose Caicedo, we could lose McAllister, and yes, we took a hit last season not having them in our side, but we didn't fall from grace. We finished 11th, and that's not terrible by any stretch. If we finish 12th this year, that's not terrible by any stretch. We're sitting mid-table in the Premier League, and we're building something still. So I think that's the positive that we take from it, is the fact that we are still building, and we haven't. A lot of people say, "Oh, you've lost De Zerbi, you've lost Gross. Gosh, you're taking one hell of a step back." We're not. We're still taking 5 steps forward, and I think that's credit to Tony Bloom. That's credit to Paul Barber for doing what they do and what they do so well. And we're really excited for Fabian Hertzler. The football that we've seen under him has been scary at times. I think we're going to get hit on the counter a few times this season, but we're going to score a lot of goals. So I wouldn't be surprised if this weekend it's like a 4-3 either way.
Again, it sounds like the polar opposite to us, but again, we'll get onto that in a moment. So just briefly before we move on to the game, the signings, what have they looked like so far? I've obviously just touched on Minter, who's the guy who's caught my eye, particularly because Everton were really trying to get him over the line.
Yeah, it's a strange one because we're struggling to keep track of our signings, which is just crazy. We've got 2 more coming through the door, hopefully, in the next couple of days. And once we get those guys in, we're spending near on £200 million, which as a Brighton fan, to say that, considering in 2004 we spent 250k on Colin Kazim-Richards, which was given to us by a competition run by Coca-Cola. It's just absolutely mental. And, we've made some incredible signings that a lot of bigger teams are jealous of. Mats Pfeiffer has come in from Feyenoord, and I know Liverpool were trying to hijack that deal towards the end of it, but he chose us, which is incredible. Obviously, Yankuba Minter, we got him because of the financial fair play deadline day, if you call it that. And people are looking at that and saying £33 million for someone who isn't proven in the Premier League. But then, he played European football last season for Feyenoord and played at a decent level. And there's a lot of people, again, jealous that we've got him. Newcastle fans were losing their minds that they were losing him. And it's just crazy that we're talking about a £33 million signing in Yankuba Minter and a £25 million signing in Mats Pfeiffer, and we're not done there. Yeah. We've spent an insane amount. We're spending £40 million on Rutter from Leeds, 25 million on Kadioglu from Fenerbahce. It's just not ending, and obviously just spent £30 million on Gruder from Mainz as well. So one of the sticking points last season was we're not giving Roberto De Zerbi the financial backing that he deserves. We did spend money for him. We spent over £100 million, which in my opinion is financial backing. And it was known that Brighton were going to be sitting on a war chest this transfer window, and that we were going into this window in the most healthiest way possible. And I'm so happy that it's been proven correct, that we've gone here and we're the 5th top spenders in the world, alongside Real Madrid, Chelsea, Barcelona, clubs like this. And it's like, it just blows my mind that that's my football club doing that. And we're not just splashing money left, right, and centre on anyone, we're making really, really good signings for the future as well. And these are players that hopefully, if they have a really good time with us, are going to go for double. So it's just a revolving door of success at Brighton. And I'm hoping that I've not got egg on my face at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I won't lie. I think you'll have a lot of Evertonians who are hoping you have, just because they're envious. Again, I said this before, you credit to you, and again, you're always the first to point out, as you just have then. It's been far from rosy in the garden for you guys. You've done it the hard way. You've come from the very bottom. It's for any Everton fan or any other fans who are going to turn around and go, well, okay, it's all right for you guys. It's not been easy, and you've done it the absolute hard way. So again, to anyone who's sitting here thinking, oh God, Joe's going on about how great it is at Brighton, but again, you've seen you guys playing in the equivalent of League Two, almost getting relegated from the Football League altogether. So no, I'm delighted for you, and again, it's I look forward to seeing this young team coming together once again. I think the relief from my point of view, certainly listening to all the names roll off the tongue, that they're probably not going to be quite gelled yet. Obviously, there's some players that are not going to be ready, I assume, for tomorrow. There's some players that are still coming through the door. I always think when you've got a team that's being put together, you've got a young coach who's instilling new ideas, the best time to play it is probably early on. While it's still a little bit raw, there's still a few things that maybe concepts that haven't completely sunk in with some of the players. And as you alluded to, that maybe that back door might be a bit more wide open than it is later on in the season.
Yeah. One thing we noted from the Villarreal game that we played last week was that they had a chance within 30 seconds. And it was Dan Juma, who was with you guys. And he hit the post.
Whichever fell to him.
Yeah, I'm quite glad. But yeah, that could have been a completely different game. They score inside the first 30 seconds. We don't go on to win 4-0. There's no chance. And I think we scored at the right times, and sort of put their heads down a little bit, and we got the opportunity to score more and more and more. So I think it's going to be on a knife edge for the first 10 minutes with us versus you guys. If you score first, then every chance. But I think if we score first, it could be a bloodbath.
Yeah. So just briefly on the style of football, and obviously you've just said that you could be vulnerable to the counter attack. I'm assuming with that it's possession based, it's expansive.
Yeah, it's quite. Basically, he just empties the midfield. When you go forwards, it's 6 players in the final third, ready and waiting to run into the box, and it's very, very intense football. The high press is unbelievable. Yankuba Minter is an absolute pressing monster. That's what we've seen over pre-season. He doesn't stop. But then you've got Karim Matoma on the other side, who again doesn't stop. João Pedro last season didn't stop at all. So I think if you've got all 3 of those players starting, and Everton are trying to, I don't know, play some football at the back, then we could press you quite highly. But obviously Sean Dyche and all that. But yeah, I think that there's a lot to be worried about in terms of how Everton can break us and counter. I think you do counter well every time I've seen you play, and every time you've beaten us, it's been because you've countered so well. That 5-1 win at the Amex was, 5 counter attacks, and you finished them off. So I think with a Sean Dyche side, you do probably get that sort of, I wouldn't say, yeah, and not anti-football, but just
it's very much I think probably Sean Dyche would admit himself, he goes out to try and play the opposite of what the opposition are doing, and try and not just play to their weaknesses, but just do all of the things that are going to make it difficult for you guys and make it uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that's what I worry about. As you say, you've got a young coach and you've got a young side, and they go to Goodison Park, which the fans are quite close to you and can make you feel quite hostile, I'd imagine. If they're uncomfortable in the first 10-15 minutes, then Everton can have a really good start to the game, and you know, there's a lot that Everton can do that might unsettle us. So I think, as I say, it's going to be on a knife edge, and which way is it going to go?
Can you give us the apart from the front three, which you've alluded to, can you give us an idea of the lineup? Does James Milner, for example, is he still going to start the game? You think?
It's a good question. It's a good question. I think he will. I don't want him to, but I think he will. Although he has had a very good preseason, so I wouldn't be completely against him starting. I know. For me, it would be, but no, Verbruggen's out, injured for now. So Jason Steele in goal, a back four of Hinshelwood at right back, Lewis Dunk, JP Van Hecke at centre back. Left back would be Barco. My midfield pairing, I would like it to be Mats Pfeiffer and Carlos Baliba. I think they would be a really, really good partnership. Ahead of them would be Minter on the right, Matoma on the left. And then I think it'll be João Pedro in the 10 and Danny Welbeck up top. But I think what the shape that we like to play is João Pedro would be more like a shadow striker. So he'll be more sort of in line with Danny Welbeck and play off of him rather than being the natural number 10 role. So, yeah, I think it will probably be a 4-2-4.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a very typical 4-2-3-1 from us with two holding midfielders, Guy and Tim around you. We've got Brandwaite out. We've got an abundance of right backs out. I think Ashley Young will be starting, which again, a bit like Milner. It's like, oh God, he's still rolling him out again, and he's going to be so vulnerable. He's so vulnerable to pace now, particularly at his age. But he's always been a little bit like that. He's a winger playing right back, isn't he? We always remember Ashley Young as that winger when he was young, and he's still got those traits. It'll be Michaelenko left back, but I don't worry as much for Michaelenko. He's a very good defender. He's just not great going forward. Ahead of them, we'll probably have Jack Harrison. Whether he's going to, it'll be Jack Harrison, I imagine. McNeil on the other side, although I think a lot of Evertonians would like to see Lindstrom play. Jesper Lindstrom scored a good free kick against Preston. Looks a very, very technical player. Something we've been lacking. He's got a bit more pace than the other two. I think he will stick with Decore behind Calvert-Lewin, but again, a lot of fans hoping that Iliman Ndiaye plays. Again, a player with a lot of pace that we've lacked at times, and I think further to what you were saying in terms of the concerns about the break, I would like to see a little bit more pace in that team. So I guess the left and right players, I always assume, knowing Sean Dyche and the way that he is, they'll probably stick with what he knows in Harrison, McNeil and Decore. But I would like to see Ndiaye or Lindstrom in one of those two wide positions. I probably would stick with Decore behind Calvert-Lewin because they've just got such a familiar partnership. How long Calvert-Lewin's going to be with us, time will tell over the next couple of weeks. But if we do lose Calvert-Lewin, we're certainly going to have to bring someone in of similar athleticism, which is going to be a challenge. But very interesting one. I mean, I definitely look at your back four, particularly the two centre backs, and think we can get at them two down the sides. I'm not sure how ambitious the full backs are going to be in terms of getting forward, but I look at it and think, we've lost Joe. Cheers, Joe. Lost you for a moment there, but yeah, what I was saying, Joe, is I get a feeling from our point of view that certainly, given what you've said about your vulnerability, the counter attack, and maybe the style that the manager is going to employ from users, that getting down the channels will be our best chance, i.e. Calvert-Lewin running in that kind of channel in between the centre back and behind the fullbacks. How forward of what style, how has he deployed the fullback so far, inside the pitch or outside the pitch, and how high have they been?
Yeah, they do push quite highly, which will probably be something you want to hear. When we're in possession, we look more like a sort of back three, was Pfeiffer would drop in as the holding defender or defensive midfielder and form that three with JP Van Hecke and Lewis Dunk, and the fullbacks would just bomb forward and join Minter and Mitoma. So as I say, I think that's why we're worried to play against the teams like Everton, who will play to our weaknesses and hit us where they feel like there are gaps. And that's where there are gaps, and it worries me slightly that you've sort of said that you can play that way, because I think that Sean Dyche definitely will hurt us that way. So, it's going to be a really interesting game, a really interesting tactical sort of battle on the pitch, I think, just to see how well we can cope in the Premier League, playing the way that Hertzler wants us to play.
Mm. And we're absolutely, I mean, even with the loss of Anana, we're a huge team now. As it was always going to be under Sean Dyche, with the sign of Jake O'Brien, who I think 6'6", bigger than Jared Branthwaite, although Jared Branthwaite isn't available this weekend. We're a huge threat from set plays now. So I definitely think, given that as well, hitting them channels, thinking that regardless of how it goes, if we can just nick it off Duncan, get a corner, or we can just hit it. That was something that was I wouldn't say bizarre, but when Sean Dyche first took over, he literally would just have the wide players passing the ball against defenders to get corners, just kicking it off them. So yeah. I think if you're going back to those types of strategies, just to try and get the set plays where we can.
Set pieces terrify me as well. We have just got rid of Nick Stanley, who is our set piece coach. He's gone to Norwich, and Norwich fans aren't having a very good time with their set pieces at the moment, which is quite amusing. But again, I think the defensive phase of the set pieces for us is still a problem, because we conceded quite a few over pre-season. I say quite a few. We only conceded 3 goals over pre-season, but 2 of those were a set piece. So yeah, that is a worry. But I think something that Hertzler has been vocal about is improving our set pieces, both defensively and offensively, and having them as real opportunities to, one, break away and get you on the counter when it's a corner for you guys, or 2, use them in really effective ways when we get them in your final third. So that is definitely a positive for us.
I think you actually did you score against us at the Amex? I'm sure your equaliser last season was from a corner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so Pascal Gross delivered it. It hit the first man, of course. And it came back to Pascal Gross. He did one of his lovely Pascal Gross turns. We don't call it a Cruyff turn, we call it a Pascal Gross turn. And he delivered it to Lewis Dunk, who luckily was there to bury it for us in the 90th minute.
Yeah, of course it was. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. But yeah, listen, Joe. Before we lose you, a couple of things. First of all, before we get into the prediction for the game, prediction for the season. I mean, I done my prediction for the Premier League table yesterday on a different show. I had you finishing 9th. I think, but that's exactly the same as this season. I think my comments were, again, typically excellent business from Brighton, which looks to be improving as the window goes on. Again, an exciting young coach who looks like he's going to play progressive football. And I think that a lot of teams around you, both below and above, that haven't significantly improved in a number of departments. Your squad looks stronger, and added to that, no European football, which is obviously disappointing, but less distractions. Where do you see Brighton finishing the season?
Oh, it's such a weird one. If we can get these last 2 signings over the line, then I think we've got probably one of the best squads we've had, minusing Caicedo and McAllister. I think if you put Caicedo and McAllister into the squad that we will have at the end of the window, you'll be talking about a team that could easily qualify for the Champions League, which blows my mind to even think a slight possibility of that happening. But I think we are going to have enough to mount a serious European challenge. I think we might fall just short, and I would place us, I think, 8th. And I don't think the what they call the coalitions or something like that will work out in our way. Coefficients,
yeah.
Coefficients will work out in a way that we don't get Europe, which would be slightly annoying. But I think we'll mount a serious charge.
Yeah, I agree. I think the teams that are finishing above you with the likes of Newcastle, etc. And I think I would. I tempered that with Newcastle. The likes of Newcastle need a lot of players to stay fit for them to be consistent and to stay above you. But I think I just thought that there's a lot of moving parts still, and there will be, I think, up until Christmas, players coming in and out and trying out different positions, etc. And players obviously are coming into the Premier League, so I think you'll pick up massively. Not that you'll lose a lot of games early in the season, but I think you'll beat a lot more of the top sides. I think later in the season when things start to come together, but it might be a little too late to get the European places. But
I think that the team that people are sleeping on a little bit is Bournemouth. They're making some really good signings and they played some good football at the end of last season. I think they could be the ones to upset the apple cart at the top. Not at the top, but I think they could probably challenge for a top half space, which will be annoying for us and the likes of Villa and Crystal Palace and people like that. It was one of those things where last season we were looking over our shoulders and thinking Bournemouth could catch us. And there's always one or two teams that sort of are breathing down your neck and you're like, just go away. We don't have to think about you. We want to think about who's above us. But I think they could be one of those teams this year. I think they'll finish probably 12th, but I think they will be okay.
I'm not sure. I mean, it was good. They made a good signing in Evan Nielsen, very good signing yesterday. But I was concerned at the loss of Solanke. They get so many goals from him. He's such a strong influence on that team. I think a lot depends on how quickly Evan Nielsen can settle. He's certainly got the right physical profile, and he's definitely he'll definitely relish that challenge in the Premier League. But I think that a lot depends, a lot hinges on that. I think if they had their way, they would have lost Solanke at the end of last season and had the chance of, the whole summer bedding a new striker in. But I think that'll be interesting. Fulham, for me, are the ones who I think are staring down a battle this season. I think Marco Silva has got such a tendency to sulk, and he's doing that a lot in the media at the moment. This is the longest by a distance that he's been in a club management position. I think he'll be gone by November, if not earlier. He hasn't really been backed. They've lost a couple of defenders, and the defenders they've lost in Tim Ream and Tosin have been there for a while. And Marco Silva doesn't defend well anyway. He struggles with that, but he's had a few experienced campaigners back there that have kind of kept things together. I think without them, they're going to be wide open, and they haven't really got the firepower anymore to shoot teams down. So I think for me, they would be the team that sticks out as probably a bit of value to back to get relegated, to be honest.
Yeah, and no João Paulinho as well.
Exactly.
He's obviously gone to Bayern, so.
And
we know what it's like losing your centre defensive midfielder in Caicedo. I think they'll definitely struggle.
And when you're bringing in, Smith Rowe as the new, the player who's going to hold the candle, and you expect them to get goals and assists, and he's never really been counted on his whole career. You've got the likes of a Wobie who can just go missing. Bobby Decordova-Reid, just for me, as a championship player. It's but interesting one. Any other teams you think to look out for? Any teams you're concerned about apart from Everton?
Concerned about Crystal Palace. They had a very good end to the season last season. Concerned about them because I think they could finish above us again, which I will not like at all. I really hope not. But there is certainly a possibility that could happen. And I think you would be wrong not to think of that possibility, but it's something that I don't like to think about too much. And it's I
wouldn't be so concerned. I think Oliver Glasner is a very good coach, but I think he got fortunate last year when he come in with the return of Elise and Eze almost both at the same time.
True.
Fair play to how much of a tune he got out of Mateta, and I think if he can keep that up, they've obviously got a good chance of finishing higher, but I don't see enough depth in that squad. I think losing Elise and bringing in the guy from Lazio, who looks at a neat and tidy player, but he's a second tier attacking midfielder. I think a lot depends on Eze. They've got to keep him fit, and they've got to keep Mateta fit. And I don't think there's too many dimensions to that team.
No, that's true.
It is very one-dimensional. Is style of play anyway. So I think if anything, I wouldn't say they'll struggle, but I don't think they'll be as effective as they were towards the end of last season, which I think you guys will be.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope that Man City come in for Eze and just take him away. Pay £60 million.
Very late.
Again. But yeah, I'll be very happy with that. If they're weakening them rather than us, because I think there's a slight concern that they might come in for João Pedro, but they'd have to spend a lot of money for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Joe, as always, absolute pleasure catching up with you. Again, best of luck for the season after tomorrow, as we always say. And again, we look forward to catching up with you for the return leg later on the season.
Nice one, buddy. Appreciate it. And yeah, good luck. Cheers.
All the best, mate. Bye-bye.